The classroom felt like a prison. 16-year-old Daniel sat in his usual spot at the very back, slouched so low in his chair that he was practically sliding onto the floor. His hood was pulled up over his head, even though the school rules clearly said no hoods indoors. He didn't care anymore. What were they going to do? Send him to the principal's office? That would be the third time this week, and it was only Wednesday. The math teacher was saying something about equations. Daniel couldn't hear her properly, and honestly, he wasn't trying to. The words just floated past him like background noise. He was too busy thinking about the argument he'd had with his mom that morning. She'd found his report card hidden under his bed. All F's, every single subject. Her face had crumpled when she saw it, and that look hurt more than any yelling ever could. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably his friend asking if he wanted to skip last period and hang out at the convenience store down the street. Daniel had been skipping a lot lately. What was the point of sitting in class when he didn't understand anything anyway? He was too far behind. The teachers had given up on him months ago. He could see it in their eyes. They'd glance at him, sigh, and move on to students who actually cared. The bell rang for lunch. Daniel stayed in his seat while everyone else rushed out. He wasn't hungry. His mom had left for her first job at 5 in the morning, so there'd been no breakfast. She worked at a diner until 2 in the afternoon, then went straight to her evening shift at a grocery store. She didn't get home until almost 11 at night. Daniel usually heard her come in while he was gaming, heard her tired footsteps, heard her pause outside his door like she wanted to come in and talk. But she never did. She was too exhausted, and he was too ashamed. The guidance counselor appeared at the classroom door. Mrs. Patterson. She was one of those annoyingly positive people who smiled too much and always acted like she believed in you, even when you gave her absolutely no reason to. "Daniel, can you come with me for a moment?" she asked. He wanted to say no. He wanted to walk right past her and out of the building. But something in her voice wasn't the usual cheerful tone. She sounded serious, almost sad. He followed her down the hallway to her small office. It smelled like coffee and had those motivational posters on the walls. You know the ones. Pictures of mountains with words like perseverance and believe in yourself. Daniel thought they were stupid. Mrs. Patterson sat down across from him. She didn't smile this time. "Daniel, I'm not going to sugarcoat this," she said. "You're failing every class. At this rate, you won't graduate with your class. You might not graduate at all. I've called you in here 7 times this semester. I've sent emails. I've talked to your teachers. Nothing's changing." Daniel stared at the floor. He'd heard versions of this speech before. "I get it," he mumbled. "I'm a disappointment. I'm wasting everyone's time. Can I go now?" "That's not what I said," Mrs. Patterson replied firmly. "I said nothing's changing, and I need you to hear something important. Every day you come to school, every day you sit in that back row, you're making a choice. You're choosing your future right now, Daniel. Right this second. Is this really who you want to be?" Something about those words hit differently. Maybe it was the way she said them. Not angry, not disappointed, just honest. Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. "I don't know who I want to be," he said quietly. "I just know I'm tired. I'm tired of failing. I'm tired of seeing my mom work herself to death because I'm not helping. I'm tired of being the kid everyone's given up on." "I haven't given up on you," Mrs. Patterson said. "You should," Daniel said. "I'm too far behind. There's no way I can catch up now. I can barely understand what happened last week, let alone stuff from last year. It's too late." Mrs. Patterson leaned forward. "It's only too late if you decide it is. Yes, you're behind. Yes, it'll be hard. But hard doesn't mean impossible. I've seen students turn things around from worse situations than yours." Daniel wanted to believe her. Part of him desperately wanted to believe that he could be different, that he could fix this mess he'd made. But another part of him, the louder part, said it was pointless. He'd tried before. Back in 9th grade, he'd promised himself he'd do better. That lasted about 2 weeks before he fell back into old habits. "What's even the point?" he asked. "I don't have a future anyway. I'm going to end up working minimum wage jobs like my mom. Why waste time pretending school matters?" "Is that what you think of your mom's work?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "That it doesn't matter?" "No, I just meant your mom works 2 jobs to keep a roof over your head. That takes incredible strength. But I bet if you asked her, she'd tell you she wants something different for you, something easier, more opportunities. That's what education gives you. Options. Daniel felt his eyes getting hot. He blinked hard. He was not going to cry in the guidance counselor's office. I don't even know where to start, he admitted. Everything's so messed up. Mrs. Patterson pulled out a sheet of paper and slid it across the desk. This is a list of after-school programs, tutoring, study groups, mentorship programs. The community center has resources too. You don't have to figure this out alone. Daniel looked at the paper but didn't pick it up. My mom needs me to watch my little sister after school. She can't afford a babysitter. The community center has a youth program where siblings can come. You could get help with homework while your sister does activities. There was always an answer, always a solution. It made Daniel feel even worse somehow, because if there were solutions, then the only thing stopping him was himself, his own laziness, his own fear. The bell rang for next period. Daniel stood up to leave. Think about it, Mrs. Patterson said. You don't have to decide everything today. Just decide what you're going to do differently tomorrow. One day. That's all. Daniel walked out of her office with the paper crumpled in his hand. He went to his next class, sat in the back, put his hood up. But this time he couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. Was this really who he wanted to be? The answer, if he was honest with himself, was no. He didn't want to be this person. He didn't want to see that disappointed look on his mom's face ever again. He didn't want to feel like a failure at 16 years old. But wanting to change and actually changing were two completely different things. And Daniel had no idea how to bridge that gap. Daniel made it through the rest of the school day, but barely. His mind kept circling back to that conversation with Mrs. Patterson. When the final bell rang, he should have gone straight home to pick up his sister from the neighbor's apartment. That was the routine. Every day, same thing. But today his feet took him somewhere different. The community center was only 3 blocks from school. Daniel had passed it 1,000,000 times but never actually gone inside. It was an old brick building that looked like it used to be something else, maybe a warehouse. There was a basketball court out front with chain nets and cracked concrete. The sound of a ball bouncing echoed across the empty lot. Daniel stopped walking. Someone was out there playing. Just one person shooting hoops by himself. The guy looked older, maybe in his 30s, wearing worn-out sneakers and a faded college t-shirt. He moved with the kind of easy confidence that came from years of practice. Swish, 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 3 perfect shots in a row. Daniel found himself walking toward the court. He didn't plan to. His legs just moved on their own. The man grabbed his rebound and noticed Daniel standing at the edge of the court. You play? He asked. Used to, Daniel said. Not really anymore. Why'd you stop? Daniel shrugged. I don't know. Just did. The man bounced the ball once, twice. That's usually code for something else. Let me guess. Got too busy? Lost interest? Or somebody told you that you weren't good enough? That last one hit close to home. Daniel had played in middle school, even made the team in 8th grade. But when high school tryouts came around, the coach had pulled him aside and said maybe he should focus on other things. Translation, you're not good enough for this level. Something like that, Daniel said. The man tossed him the ball. Daniel caught it automatically. The familiar texture of the rubber against his palms felt good. Felt right. I'm Coach Reynolds, the man said. I run the youth program here. You look like you could use a game. 1-on-1. 1st to 11. I'm not really scared. Coach Reynolds smiled, but not in a mean way. More like a challenge. Daniel hadn't felt challenged in a long time. He'd felt judged, dismissed, ignored, but not challenged. Not like someone actually expected something from him. Fine, Daniel said. But don't expect much. They started playing. Daniel was rusty, his shots clanging off the rim more than going in. Coach Reynolds wasn't going easy on him either. He played hard, blocking shots, stealing the ball, making Daniel work for every single point. It was frustrating and exhausting and somehow exactly what Daniel needed. For 20 minutes, he didn't think about failing grades or his tired mom or his messed up life. He just played. Coach Reynolds won 11-4. Daniel was bent over, hands on his knees, breathing hard. He couldn't remember the last time he'd exercised like that. His chest burned and his legs felt like jelly, but he was almost smiling. You've got potential, Coach Reynolds said, barely winded. Your form's decent. You just stopped believing you could make the shot. That's all mental. Daniel straightened up. Yeah, well, mental's kind of my problem with everything. Coach Reynolds grabbed 2 water bottles from a cooler by the fence and tossed one to Daniel. They sat on the bench at the side of the court. "Let me tell you something," Coach Reynolds said. "I played college ball. Had a full scholarship, the whole deal. My junior year, I blew out my knee. Doctor said I'd probably never play competitively again. I spent 6 months feeling sorry for myself. Then I realized something. Basketball gave me discipline, structure, goals. Just because I couldn't play professionally didn't mean I had to lose all of that." "So you became a coach," Daniel said. "Eventually. First I had to finish my degree. That was the hardest thing I've ever done, sitting in classes while my former teammates were on the court. But I did it. And now I get to help kids who need what basketball gave me." Daniel took a long drink of water. "Mrs. Patterson sent you, didn't she?" Coach Reynolds laughed. "Mrs. Patterson doesn't send me anywhere. But she did mention there was a junior at Lincoln High who could use some direction. Said you were smart but lost. Was she right?" Daniel didn't answer right away. "Was he lost?" "Yeah, completely. He had no idea what he was doing or where he was going. Every day felt like stumbling around in the dark." "Maybe," he finally said. "Okay, here's what I'm thinking," Coach Reynolds said. "I'm here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons from 3:30 to 6. You come shoot hoops with me. We work on your game. I'll teach you everything I know. Just like that. For free." "There's a catch," Coach Reynolds said, and Daniel's stomach sank. Of course there was a catch. "You bring your homework. Whatever you've got due. And before we play, you sit at that table over there and you work on it for at least an hour. I'll help if you need it." Daniel almost laughed. "You want to tutor me?" "I want to give you structure. A reason to show up. Something to work toward. Basketball is the prize. Homework is the price." Coach Reynolds stood up and grabbed the ball. "Think about it. But the offer expires Friday. After that, I'm not asking again." Daniel watched him walk back onto the court and start shooting again. Each shot found nothing but net. It looked so easy when Coach Reynolds did it. So natural. Like he wasn't even trying. That night, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about the offer. He sat in his room with his math textbook open in front of him, staring at problems that looked like a foreign language. His little sister Katie was asleep in the bed they shared in the tiny second bedroom. His mom was at work. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of traffic outside and someone's TV playing too loud next door. Daniel picked up his pencil. He tried one problem. Got it wrong. Tried another. Got that wrong too. He felt the familiar frustration building, that voice in his head saying he was too stupid to figure this out, that he should just give up. But then he thought about that feeling on the basketball court. That moment when everything else disappeared and it was just him and the game. He wanted that feeling again. Wanted it so badly it surprised him. The next day at school, Daniel did something he hadn't done in months. He paid attention in class. Actually paid attention, not to everything, because honestly some of it was still over his head. But he tried. When his English teacher handed back essays, Daniel actually read the comments instead of just crumpling the paper into his backpack. She'd written, "You have interesting ideas but need to support them with evidence. Come see me after class if you want help." Usually Daniel would have ignored that, but today he stayed after, awkwardly stood by her desk until the other students left. "I don't really know what evidence means," he admitted. "Like what kind of evidence?" His teacher looked surprised but recovered quickly. "It means examples from the text. If you say a character is brave, you need to show me the part of the story where they did something brave." "Oh. That actually made sense. So it's like proving your point." Exactly like that. It was such a small moment. Such a simple explanation. But Daniel felt something shift. Maybe he wasn't too dumb for school. Maybe he just needed someone to explain things in a way that made sense. On Friday afternoon, Daniel showed up at the community center. He had his backpack full of homework and a knot of nervousness in his stomach. Coach Reynolds was already there, setting up cones on the court. "Wasn't sure you'd come," Coach Reynolds said. "Yeah, well, I'm here." Daniel hesitated. "I brought my homework. But I don't know if I can do an hour. I have to pick up my sister by 5. Then we'll work for as long as you've got. Bring your sister next time. The center has a kids program until 6. They went inside to a room with tables and chairs. It looked like a cafeteria. A few other kids were scattered around doing homework or playing games in the corner. Daniel pulled out his math worksheet and stared at it. "Start with what you know," Coach Reynolds said, sitting down across from him. Don't look at the whole page. Just do one problem, Daniel tried. He got stuck. Coach Reynolds didn't give him the answer. Instead, he asked questions. What are they asking you to find? What information do they give you? What operation do you think you need? Slowly, step by step, Daniel worked through one problem. Then another. Some he got wrong. Some he actually got right. By the time he had to leave, he'd finished half the worksheet. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd done in weeks. Same time Monday, Coach Reynolds asked as Daniel packed up. Daniel nodded. He actually felt okay. Not great. Not fixed, but okay. Like maybe this wasn't completely hopeless after all. Walking home to get Katie, Daniel realized something. For the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to something. Monday felt less like a prison sentence and more like a chance. A chance to get better. To prove something. Maybe not to anyone else yet, but at least to himself. Everything was going well. Maybe too well. Daniel should have known something would go wrong. Life had a way of kicking you when you were just starting to stand up. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Daniel was getting ready for school when his mom's phone rang. She answered it in the kitchen, and Daniel heard her voice change from tired to scared in about 3 seconds. What? When did this happen? Is he okay? Daniel walked into the kitchen. His mom's face had gone pale. She was gripping the phone so hard her knuckles were white. Okay, yes, I'll be there as soon as I can. She hung up and just stood there, staring at nothing. Mom, what's wrong? Your grandfather. He had a stroke. They took him to the hospital in Phoenix. She pressed her hands against her face. I have to go. I have to get there. Daniel's grandfather lived 3 hours away. They didn't see him often because of the distance and because Daniel's mom worked so much. But he was still family. The only family they had besides his mom's younger brother, who was deployed overseas with the military. How are you going to get there? Daniel asked. They didn't have a car. His mom took the bus to both her jobs. I'll figure it out. I'll borrow money for a bus ticket. She was already moving around the apartment, throwing things in a bag. You and Katie will have to stay with Mrs. Martinez downstairs. I'll call her. For how long? I don't know. A few days, maybe. A week. His mom stopped and looked at him. Really looked at him. Daniel, I need you to keep going to school. Keep doing your homework. Don't let this derail everything you've been working on. I know, Mom. But inside, Daniel felt the familiar panic creeping back. The structure he'd built was already cracking. How was he supposed to focus on school when his mom was gone and his grandfather might be dying? His mom left that afternoon. Mrs. Martinez was nice enough, but her apartment was crowded. She had 4 kids of her own, and adding Daniel and Katie to the mix made everything chaotic. There was nowhere quiet to do homework. The TV was always on. Kids were always yelling. Wednesday came and Daniel went to school, but he couldn't concentrate. He kept thinking about his mom, about his grandfather, about how everything could fall apart so fast. He skipped his afternoon session with Coach Reynolds, told himself he'd go Friday instead. Thursday, his mom called. She sounded exhausted and stressed. Your grandfather is stable, but he can't live alone anymore. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I might need to stay longer. How much longer? I don't know, baby. I'm sorry. Just keep your head down and stay out of trouble. Friday, Daniel meant to go to the community center. He really did. But Tyler caught up with him after school. Hey, man, we're hanging out at Kevin's place. His parents are gone. You should come. Daniel hesitated. He should go to the center. He should do his homework. But he was tired. Tired of trying so hard. Tired of everything being difficult. Yeah, okay, he said. They went to Kevin's apartment and played video games for hours. Ordered pizza. Didn't talk about anything important. It felt good to just zone out and not think. Daniel told himself it was just one day. He'd get back on track Monday. But Monday came and his mom called again. The news was worse. His grandfather needed surgery. She had to stay at least another week, maybe 2, and there was another problem. She'd missed so many shifts at both jobs that she was in danger of losing them, and rent was due in 5 days. I don't have enough, she told Daniel quietly, like she was ashamed. I'm going to call the landlord and ask for an extension, but I don't know if he'll agree. After she hung up, Daniel sat on Mrs. Martinez's couch and felt the weight of reality crushing him. They were going to lose their apartment. His mom might lose her jobs. His grandfather was sick. And what was Daniel doing? Playing basketball and pretending school mattered? He stopped going to the community center. Stop doing homework. What was the point? They were probably going to have to move anyway. Maybe to Phoenix to take care of his grandfather, maybe to some shelter. Everything he'd been building felt stupid and pointless now. Mrs. Patterson noticed first. She called him to her office on Thursday. "Daniel, what's going on? Your teachers say you've checked out again. You're not turning in work. My mom's gone. My grandfather is sick. We're probably going to lose our apartment." Daniel's voice came out harder than he meant it to. "So yeah, I've got bigger problems than homework." Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. "I understand this is difficult, but giving up won't help your situation. Neither will passing a test," Daniel shot back. "Maybe not immediately. But what message does it send to your mom if she comes back and you've thrown away everything you worked for? Will that help her?" Daniel didn't have an answer for that. He left her office feeling angry and confused and lost. That afternoon, he was walking past the community center when he heard someone call his name. Coach Reynolds jogged over. "Haven't seen you in a while," Coach Reynolds said. "Everything okay?" "No, everything's not okay." Daniel felt something crack inside him. "My mom's gone. My grandfather's dying. We're going to lose our apartment. I don't have time for basketball or homework or any of this stuff. I need to figure out how to help my family." Coach Reynolds was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Come inside for a minute." "I can't. I have to." "5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Reluctantly, Daniel followed him inside to the office. Coach Reynolds gestured for him to sit down. "Let me tell you something about my story that I didn't mention before," Coach Reynolds said. "When I blew out my knee, that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came 6 months later when my dad got diagnosed with cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave him maybe a year." Daniel looked up. "I was 20 years old, in college. I thought about dropping out to take care of him. Work full-time. Be there for my mom and my younger sisters. It seemed like the responsible thing to do." "What did you do?" "My dad sat me down and told me that if I dropped out it would break his heart worse than the cancer. He said the best thing I could do for the family was finish my degree. Become something. Make the struggle worth it." Coach Reynolds leaned forward. "So I stayed in school. I worked part-time. I went home every weekend. It was the hardest year of my life. But I graduated, and my dad lived long enough to see it. He died 2 months after my graduation." Daniel felt his throat getting tight. "I'm not saying your situation is the same as mine, but I am saying that giving up doesn't help anyone. Your mom is fighting for you and your sister. The best way you can fight back is to keep pushing forward." "But we're going to lose our apartment," Daniel said. "What am I supposed to do about that?" "I don't know, but I know some people who might help. The community center has emergency assistance programs, food banks, connections to organizations that help with rent. Let me make some calls." "Why do you even care?" Daniel asked. The question came out before he could stop it. "Why does any of this matter to you?" Coach Reynolds smiled sadly. "Because 10 years ago I was a kid who almost gave up. And someone showed up for me. That's what we do. We show up for each other." Over the next 3 days, Coach Reynolds made good on his promise. He connected Daniel's mom with an organization that helped families in crisis. They paid for 2 months of rent. He found a program that delivered free groceries to Mrs. Martinez's apartment. He even talked to the manager at his mom's grocery store job and explained the situation. The manager agreed to hold her position for 2 more weeks. Daniel didn't know how to process this. Strangers were helping his family. People who didn't even know them were choosing to care. "How do I pay this back?" Daniel asked. "You don't pay it back. You pay it forward. Someday when you're on your feet, you help someone else who's struggling." The crisis didn't disappear. His grandfather still needed surgery. His mom was still stressed and gone. Their situation was still fragile, but they weren't falling through the cracks. Not yet. Daniel went back to the community center on Monday, brought his homework, sat at the table and tried to catch up on everything he'd missed. It was overwhelming. He'd fallen behind again in just 2 weeks. "One assignment at a time," Coach Reynolds reminded him. "You don't have to fix everything today." That night, Daniel's mom called. She sounded different, less defeated. "The surgery went well," she said. "Your grandfather is going to recover. It'll take time, but he's going to be okay. And Daniel, I heard about what Coach Reynolds did, about the help you got. It wasn't me. It was him, but you showed up. You asked for help instead of trying to handle everything alone. That takes courage." His mom paused. "I'm coming home next week. And when I get there, we're going to figure this out together, as a family." After she hung up, Daniel sat with those words. Together. As a family. He wasn't alone in this. He didn't have to carry everything by himself. The next 2 weeks were hard. Catching up on schoolwork felt impossible. His grades had dipped again. He was back to D's in most classes. But he showed up. Every day. Every homework session. Every basketball practice. Coach Reynolds was patient. He didn't lecture Daniel about the setback. He just helped him climb back up one step at a time. Life's going to throw stuff at you, Coach Reynolds said one afternoon after practice. That's guaranteed. The question isn't whether you'll fall down. It's whether you'll get back up. Daniel was getting back up. Slowly, painfully. But he was doing it. When his mom finally came home, she looked exhausted but relieved. She hugged Daniel and Katie for a long time. Then she sat them down at the kitchen table. Things are going to be tight for a while, she said, but we're going to make it. And Daniel, I want you to know how proud I am of you, for how you handled these past few weeks, for not giving up. Daniel felt the tears coming and didn't try to stop them this time. I almost did give up. But you didn't. That's what counts. That night, Daniel opened his books and got back to work. The path forward wasn't clear. The obstacles were still there. But he'd learned something important. When life knocked you down, you had two choices: stay down or stand back up. And standing up, even when it hurt, was always the right choice. Senior year started differently than Daniel ever imagined it would. Instead of dreading school, he actually felt something close to excitement. Over the summer, he'd kept up with the community center program, kept working with Coach Reynolds, kept reading. His mom had stabilized both her jobs, and his grandfather was recovering in an assisted living facility that accepted his insurance. Things weren't perfect. They were still broke most of the time. Their apartment was still small, but stable felt like a luxury after the chaos of last spring. The first day of senior year, Daniel walked into his classes and realized something strange. Teachers remembered him, not as the kid in the back who never tried, as the kid who'd turned things around. Daniel, good to see you, Mr. Garcia said. I have you in calculus this year. That's quite a jump from where you started. It was true. Daniel had tested into regular calculus instead of the remedial math class he'd been headed for. It wasn't the advanced placement class where the really smart kids were, but it was more than he'd thought possible 2 years ago. His schedule was full of classes that actually mattered for college. College. That word still felt foreign to Daniel. But Mrs. Patterson had sat down with him before summer break and laid it out. Your grades are good enough now to apply to state schools, maybe even get some financial aid. You need to take the SAT in October and start thinking about applications. College had never been part of Daniel's plan because he'd never thought he was smart enough. But Mrs. Patterson showed him the numbers. His GPA had climbed to a 2.9. Not impressive for some kids, but for someone who'd had a 0.8 at the end of sophomore year, it was basically a miracle. The first month of senior year flew by. Daniel juggled homework, basketball, and helping his mom with Katie. He'd also started something new, a study group. It was Coach Reynolds' idea. You know how to do this now, Coach Reynolds had said. Help some other kids who are where you were 2 years ago. So every Tuesday and Thursday, Daniel tutored 3 freshmen who were failing their classes. At first it felt weird being the one giving advice, but he remembered how lost he'd been, how much it mattered when someone believed he could do better. One of the kids, a freshman named Tommy, reminded Daniel of himself. Angry at the world, convinced he was too dumb for school, sitting in the back with his hood up. This is pointless, Tommy said during their second session. I'm not going to use algebra in real life. You're right, Daniel said. You probably won't, but that's not what this is really about. Then what's it about? It's about proving to yourself that you can do hard things, that when something doesn't make sense, you can figure it out. That's the skill that matters, not the algebra, the not giving up part. Tommy looked at him like he was crazy, but he kept coming back. And slowly, his grades started to improve. Daniel felt something unfamiliar watching Tommy succeed. Pride. Not in himself, but in someone else. It felt good to be part of someone else's growth. In October, Daniel took the SAT. He'd studied with a prep book from the library and done practice tests at the community center. When the scores came back, he got a 1080. Not amazing, but solidly average. And average meant possible. Mrs. Patterson helped him fill out college applications, 6 of them. State schools where the tuition was manageable and financial aid was available. Daniel wrote his personal essay about transformation, about being a kid who'd given up and then found reasons to try again, about Coach Reynolds and basketball and learning that your past doesn't have to be your future. His English teacher, Ms. Chen, read the essay and got emotional. "This is powerful, Daniel. Really powerful. You should be proud of how far you've come." But not everyone was supportive. Daniel's old friend Tyler saw him in the hallway one day and laughed. "You really think you're going to college? You're going to end up right back here working at the warehouse. Stop pretending you're better than us." The old Daniel would have gotten angry, would have felt shame, but this Daniel just shrugged. "Maybe I will end up at the warehouse, but at least I'll know I tried for something different." "What are you trying for?" Tyler didn't have an answer for that. By November, Daniel's role at school had shifted completely. Teachers asked him to help other struggling students. The basketball coach, the same one who'd cut him in 9th grade, asked if he wanted to try out for the team. Daniel said no. He was loyal to Coach Reynolds and the community center program. That's where he'd learned to play. That's where he'd learned everything that mattered. In December, college acceptance letters started arriving. The first one was a rejection. Daniel opened it and felt his stomach drop. But Coach Reynolds reminded him that rejection was part of the process. It's not about getting into every school. It's about getting into one school. Just one yes. That's all you need. The second letter was a yes. State University. Conditional acceptance pending final grades and proof of financial need. Daniel read the letter 3 times to make sure it was real. He ran all the way to the community center to tell Coach Reynolds. Burst through the doors, waving the letter. "I got in. I actually got in." Coach Reynolds grabbed him in a hug. "I never doubted it. Not for a second." "I couldn't have done this without you," Daniel said, and his voice cracked. "You didn't have to help me. You didn't even know me. Why did you do it?" Coach Reynolds pulled back and looked at him seriously. "Because someone did it for me, and because I could see what you couldn't see yet, that you were worth the effort, that you had potential buried under all that fear and anger. I just helped you dig it out." Christmas break came, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt hopeful about the future. His mom had scraped together enough money for a small tree and a few presents. Nothing expensive, but it felt like abundance compared to previous years. Katie, now 9 years old, had started doing better in school too. She'd been watching Daniel study and started imitating him, bringing home better grades, trying harder. It made Daniel realize that his choices affected more than just himself. "You're my hero," Katie told him one night while they were watching a movie. "Why?" Daniel asked. "Because you didn't give up. Even when things were really hard, you kept trying." Those words meant more to Daniel than any grade or acceptance letter. He was setting an example, being the kind of person his little sister could look up to. That responsibility felt heavy but also important. January came, and with it, final semester of high school. Daniel was carrying a 3.2 GPA now. He'd made honor roll for the first time in his life. His mom had cried when she saw the report card. Actual tears of joy. The study group had grown. Daniel was now helping 6 students. Tommy had brought his friends. Word had spread that there was this senior who actually understood what it was like to struggle and didn't make you feel stupid for not knowing things. In February, the community center hosted a recognition ceremony for students who'd shown exceptional growth. Coach Reynolds nominated Daniel. Standing on that small stage, receiving a certificate, Daniel looked out at the audience and saw his mom, Katie, Mrs. Patterson, Ms. Chen, even Mr. Garcia. All these people who'd invested in him when he was barely investing in himself. Coach Reynolds gave a speech. 2 years ago, Daniel walked onto that basketball court looking for a fight. What he found instead was a future. He's proof that it's never too late to change your story. That with hard work, support, and belief in yourself, transformation is possible. Daniel's hands shook as he accepted the certificate. He was supposed to say a few words. He hadn't prepared anything. "I don't really know what to say," he started. 2 years ago, I was failing every class. I was angry all the time. I didn't think I had a future. I definitely didn't think I'd be standing here about to graduate, about to go to college. He paused, looking at Coach Reynolds. "Someone once told me that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I was spending my whole life not taking shots, not trying, because I was scared of failing. But I learned something. Failing while trying feels a lot better than failing because you gave up. The audience applauded. Daniel saw his mom wiping her eyes. He saw Tommy in the back actually paying attention for once. He saw all the people who'd believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. March brought scholarship announcements. Daniel received a partial scholarship based on his improvement and his personal story. Combined with financial aid and some student loans, he could afford to go to college. It was really happening. In April, his school held senior awards night. Daniel didn't expect to receive anything. He wasn't valedictorian or salutatorian. He wasn't the best athlete or the most talented artist. But they called his name anyway. The Phoenix Award, the principal announced, goes to a student who has overcome significant obstacles and demonstrated remarkable personal growth. This year's recipient started high school heading in the wrong direction. Through determination, hard work, and the courage to accept help, he turned his life around. Daniel Rodriguez, please come up. Daniel walked across the stage in shock. This award existed and they were giving it to him. He accepted the plaque and looked at the inscription. From adversity comes strength. From failure comes wisdom. From perseverance comes success. In his brief speech, Daniel said, "If you're struggling right now, if you think it's too late to change things, I want you to know it's not. It's never too late. Find one person who believes in you. Could be a teacher, a coach, a counselor, a parent. Let them help you. And then do the work. It won't be easy. It'll probably be the hardest thing you ever do, but I promise you it's worth it." May arrived with final exams. Daniel studied harder than he'd ever studied for anything. He wanted to finish strong, prove that his transformation wasn't temporary. His final GPA came out to a 3.3. He'd raised his average by more than 2 full points in 2 years. Graduation day was sunny and hot. Daniel wore his cap and gown and stood with his class of 320 students. He looked around at the kids he'd gone to school with for 4 years. Some had been honor students the whole time. Some had coasted. Some had struggled like him. But today they were all the same. Graduating, moving forward, starting new chapters. When they called his name, Daniel walked across that stage and accepted his diploma. He looked out at the crowd and found his mom, crying and cheering louder than anyone else. Found Katie bouncing in her seat with excitement. Found Coach Reynolds standing in the back with his arms crossed, nodding with satisfaction. This moment was for all of them, every person who'd invested in him. Every person who'd refused to give up even when he'd given up on himself. After the ceremony, Daniel found Coach Reynolds in the parking lot. "Thank you," Daniel said simply, "for everything. You did the work," Coach Reynolds replied. "I just showed up. That's all I needed. Someone to show up." They hugged, and Daniel realized this was the end of one chapter but not the end of their relationship. Coach Reynolds had become more than a mentor. He'd become family. That night, Daniel sat on the fire escape of his apartment building, looking out at the city lights. He thought about the kid he'd been 2 years ago, angry, lost, convinced he had no future. He thought about all the moments he could have quit, all the times it would have been easier to give up, but he hadn't quit. He'd kept showing up, kept trying, kept believing, even when belief felt impossible. And here he was, high school graduate, college student, someone's role model, someone's success story. Daniel pulled out his phone and texted Tommy, "Keep going, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. It's worth it. I promise." Tommy texted back 3 minutes later, "Thanks, man. I'm trying." That's all anyone could do, Daniel thought. Try, show up, do the work, accept help, give help, keep moving forward even when the path was dark. The city stretched out before him, full of possibility. In 3 months, he'd start college. In 4 years, he'd have a degree. After that, who knew? Maybe he'd become a teacher, maybe a coach, maybe something else entirely. The future was open and uncertain and beautiful. Daniel had learned that transformation wasn't a single moment. It wasn't the day Coach Reynolds challenged him to play basketball. It wasn't the day he got his first good grade. It wasn't graduation day or college acceptance or any one achievement. Transformation was all those tiny choices added together. The choice to show up when you wanted to stay home. The choice to try when you were convinced you'd fail. The choice to accept help when pride told you to go it alone. The choice to keep going when giving up felt easier. From zero to hero wasn't a destination. It was a journey. And Daniel was just getting started. 3 years had passed since Daniel walked across that graduation stage. College had been everything he hoped for and harder than he imagined. There were moments when the old doubts crept back in. Moments when he sat in lecture halls feeling lost, surrounded by students who seemed naturally brilliant. But he'd learned something important. Feeling lost didn't mean he was lost. It just meant he needed to find his way, same as always. He'd declared a major in education with a minor in psychology. The choice felt obvious once he made it. He wanted to work with kids who were like him. Kids who thought they were too far gone to save. Kids who needed someone to show up and believe in them. During his sophomore year, Daniel had started volunteering at schools in low-income neighborhoods. He ran homework clubs and basketball clinics, combining the two things that had saved his life. The kids responded to him in ways they didn't respond to other volunteers. Maybe because he understood their struggles from the inside, he knew what it felt like to be written off. Now, as he prepared to graduate college, Daniel stood in front of Coach Reynolds' office at the community center. The building looked exactly the same as it had 4 years ago. Same cracked basketball court, same chain nets. But Daniel was completely different. He knocked on the door. "Come in," Coach Reynolds called. Daniel walked in holding a folder. Coach Reynolds looked up from his desk and smiled that familiar smile. "Daniel, good to see you. What brings you by?" "I wanted to show you something." Daniel opened the folder and pulled out an acceptance letter. "I got into the graduate program. Master's in Education. Full scholarship." Coach Reynolds stood up and pulled Daniel into a hug. "That's incredible. I'm so proud of you. There's more." Daniel pulled out another paper. "The community center is expanding their youth program. They need someone to run it, someone who understands the kids, someone who's been where they are." "They offered me the job." Coach Reynolds' eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "I start after graduation. I'll be working here, doing what you did for me, for other kids who need it." Coach Reynolds sat back down, shaking his head in amazement. "You know what this means, right? You're going to change lives, the same way yours was changed." "I hope so." Daniel sat across from him. "I've been thinking a lot about that day you challenged me to play basketball. Do you remember?" "Of course I remember. Did you know that I'd turn things around?" Coach Reynolds was quiet for a moment. "Honestly? No, I didn't know. I hoped. But I've worked with a lot of kids over the years. Some make it. Some don't. You can't predict who's going to choose to change. All you can do is be there when they're ready." "What made you keep trying with me?" "Because I saw something in your eyes. Underneath all that anger and fear, I saw a kid who was desperate for someone to care. And I figured if I was wrong, the worst that happened was I wasted some time playing basketball. But if I was right, I could help change a life. That seemed like a good bet." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "You were right. No, you were right. You were the one who decided to show up, to do the work, to keep trying when it got hard. I just opened the door. You walked through it." They talked for another hour about the program, about Daniel's plans, about the future. Before Daniel left, Coach Reynolds gave him one last piece of advice. "Remember this feeling. Right now you're on top. You've accomplished amazing things. But there will be kids who resist you, who don't want your help, who remind you of yourself at your worst. Don't give up on them. Because somewhere inside, they're fighting a battle you can't see, just like you were." Daniel nodded. He understood. He'd been that resistant kid once. Walking home that evening, Daniel passed his old high school. A group of students sat on the steps looking exactly how he used to look. Defeated, angry, lost. He almost walked past. But then he stopped. "You guys go to Lincoln?" he asked. One kid looked up. "Yeah, why?" "I graduated from there 4 years ago. Failed almost every class my first 2 years. Thought I was too dumb for school. Thought I'd never amount to anything. The kids were listening now. I was wrong. Turned out I just needed someone to show me I could do better, and a reason to try." Daniel pulled out a business card for the community center. "If you ever want help with homework or just want to play basketball, come by here. Ask for Daniel. I'll be there." He handed them the card and walked away. He didn't know if they'd come. Probably they wouldn't, but maybe one of them would. And one was enough. One person deciding to try was how everything changed. That night, Daniel video called his mom. She'd moved to a better apartment last year with money he'd sent her from his work-study job. Katie was in middle school now, straight-A student, talking about becoming a doctor. "I got the job, Mom," Daniel said. His mom's face lit up. "At the community center?" "Daniel, that's wonderful. I'm going to help kids the way Coach Reynolds helped me. You already have been, she said softly. You helped your sister. You helped those kids you tutored. You helped me by showing me that no situation is hopeless, that people can change. After they hung up, Daniel sat on his small apartment balcony and thought about the journey. From zero to hero. People loved that phrase, but it wasn't quite right. He'd never been a zero. He'd been a person with potential who couldn't see it yet. And he wasn't a hero. He was just someone who'd learned that showing up matters, that trying matters, that accepting help and then giving help is how the world gets better. Tomorrow he'd start preparing for his new role. He'd learn the ins and outs of running a youth program. He'd meet the kids who needed him. He'd probably make mistakes, probably fail sometimes, but that was okay. Failure had taught him more than success ever could. Daniel looked at the city lights and smiled. His story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And somewhere out there was a kid sitting in the back of a classroom with their hood up, convinced they had no future. Daniel's job was to find that kid and help them see what he'd learned. That every ending is really a beginning. That your past doesn't define your future. And that transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming who you were meant to be all along.